Welcome back, Matt. How are the heck are you over there in Canada?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. How about you, Dan?
Pretty good. I just stuffed myself with American Thanksgiving.
Oh, that's good. I did that on Friday, actually. So Black Friday, I was stuffing myself. So it's a day late, but okay.
Really? Did you guys
Yeah.
have turkey?
Oh, yeah, we had turkey and all the
What?
fixings.
Who
Yeah,
made it? Did your wife make it? Did you?
work.
Okay.
It was the work Christmas party, so it doesn't count. I don't know.
Hey, I'm impressed you guys had turkey for Christmas.
Yeah. It was an early work Christmas party, and I considered it Thanksgiving. So there you go.
Nice. Well, I almost burnt the house down. I got a 20-pound turkey for $6. What a deal, right?
Yeah, that is a deal.
But because it was so large, it had a hard time fitting into my oven. So
Oh
all
no.
of the juices started overflowing and evaporating and creating a lot of smoke. So
Oh, those delicious juices.
I'm sure the neighbors were like, "He sucks at cooking. Just stop."
Stop now. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of one of those weird forced holidays, that we didn't really grow up with. We kind of did, but not really.
Well, we
So
always had Americans over for American Thanksgiving.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Still feel like it was a little bit forced, but delicious either way.
So guess what happened to me
What
and
did
my
you
iMac?
Oh yeah, you got that. Oh, now is that a 2009 iMac? 2010?
I think it was a 2000. No. It was like a 2012, 2013. It's only about 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So, a 5-year-old iMac, okay, I get it. It can break down, but I was really disappointed with the fact that it was the mechanical hard drive on it. So, this iMac was the first one that came out to have basically an SSD
Oh,
hard
cool.
drive, and
Is
that's
it
where they
one of
they
the
ins-
mixed ones where it's like half a hard
yes.
drive? Okay, yeah.
I'm trying to remember what they called it, but
Hybrid.
it wasn't. Yeah, it was a hybrid, and so like they had the SSD where you put the operating system for the quick boot up, and then the storage was on a mechanical hard drive. Well, it was the mechanical hard drive that busted on me.
Oh no.
I know my 128 gig SSD that was all the rage back in
Oh,
2013 is still good, but the terabyte mechanical drive is gone, and we lost all of our photos that
oh,
I hadn't
no.
backed up.
You didn't back it up.
Well, I had a time machine backup, and
Okay.
so, but the last time I even bothered to plug in that external drive and back it up was 2012.
Oh
So it must
no.
have been right when I switched everything over to the new iMac. But then I started uploading all my photos to not iPhoto,
Google. That's what I
Google
do.
Photos. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I started doing that in 2014. So
Great.
2012 and 2013 are pretty skimpy years.
Oh no.
Yeah, so like key things that we did, like we went to Cancun, that's there. There were a couple scout camps, those are there. A few birthdays that are there, but it's not like the big photo collage that I normally have every year. So then we were told, well, for $250, we can try to see what we can do and find what's lost on this drive. And they said, but we're probably not going to find much because your drive was only 4% good.
Whoa.
I'm not sure what 4% good means or.
Were you throwing it around the house? What were you guys doing with your
No,
drive?
it just sat on the desk. That's why I'm really surprised that it failed.
Wild.
And
Yeah.
then they said for $450 we can send it downtown and they'll probably find it. But I was like, for 2 years worth of photos, and it looks like we got the main ones. Anyway, so let that be a reminder to everybody. Back up your photos, and Google Photos, in my opinion, is the best free photo backup.
Well, it's great because you can use it with iPhone or Android, and
Yes.
it also backs up your computer photo directory and your phone, and it mixes them together. So that's what I did. I had a ton of photos before I had phones, that would take
Mhm.
photos back in the 2000s. So I
Yes.
uploaded all my computer photos, and then it goes right on in with my phone photos. You can't tell a difference. It's so great.
I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic too. And I got Sharon backing up to it too. I started in about 2014. She started about 2016. So we may have lost some of her photos that she was doing, but she also has iCloud because she has an iPhone. So
Oh, sure.
that's the next thing I'm going to do is check her iCloud. But the problem with iCloud is they don't give you much storage and who knows
No.
what she really kept there. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm 100% Google right there. But you know, it's so surprising to me that your hard drive crashed because I remember when I used to make computers, you know, and we used
Yeah.
to unscrew them and put them together with the motherboard, and I
I'm
used to
going back to that.
you should, because I used
Yeah.
to drop the hard drives and
Yeah.
accidentally have magnets near it and do all kinds of crazy stuff and put them on top of each other way too close, and they were fine for years.
I'm sure you
So
could say, hey, 5 years for a hard drive, what do you expect? But on the other hand, I've never had a hard drive go
I've
on me
never had a
before.
hard drive poop out on me before.
Yeah, so backup, backup, backup. And not just your photos, but there's so much cloud storage that's free. I mean, I use OneNote, and OneNote gives me, or OneDrive, that's Microsoft's OneDrive,
Oh,
tons of free storage. And
really?
yeah, and Google Docs, Google Drive. I mean, there's all this free storage. Also, Dropbox, you can get a lot
Yeah.
of free storage. So, I mean, I use Dropbox, OneDrive, and Google Docs. I don't think there's any excuse to not be backing up. And so when
Although
we, yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed this, but Dropbox seems to be a little bit sketchy. Um,
Oh,
because I don't really fill it up with a lot of things, but I'll have friends share things with me, and then all of a
yeah.
sudden my drive's full. I'm like, well, that's not my drive. Like,
What?
you shared
Oh,
it with me,
yes. I know what
and
you're talking about.
it's
If
I
you
don't
take
yeah.
their folder, right? If you take their folder, it counts against you. Whereas all you want to do is be able to access their
Yeah.
folder. You don't want to incorporate their folder.
It's dumb, and they know that, and they're doing it because they want me to buy more space. I literally have nothing on it, but I get an email from them every day saying, "Your Dropbox is full." I'm like, "With what?"
With
Anyway,
everybody else's stuff that they're already storing that that person's already paying for.
I think they're gonna IPO next year. Either they did it this year or they're gonna do
Yeah.
it next year. So that actually could be a really good buy.
I
Um,
got to tell you, I like Dropbox. I like how everything syncs. It syncs to all my computers, my work computer, my home computer, and I can quickly access it on my phone. I don't have it synced to my phone because I don't want it to, but any file that I want is a few clicks away, and there it is. So,
well, that's even how we do this podcast, right? We send each
yeah.
other the audio files through Dropbox, and maybe that's why it's full. All
So there
of
you
your
go.
files are filling up my Dropbox.
Yeah, it probably is the audio that I'm sending you.
Now, Google actually has a really cool thing called Project Fi. And what it is it actually works with cell phones. And it's pretty cool because it will use Wi-Fi to do your telephone calls and your text messages. And it makes it a lot cheaper and it makes it a lot less dependent on the cell phone towers. Now it can still use cell phone towers, but kind of the cool thing about it is it's pretty cheap.
Hmm.
Now, I don't know if you've heard of it, but for someone like mom that loves to call people, it's only $20 a month. That includes unlimited calling and texting. And then if you want to add data on top of it, I think it's like another $10 a gigabyte, which is pretty expensive. However, you can use it anywhere. I mean, from what I understand, you can go to Italy and use it. And so it's a really good international plan to have, because the same prices you're paying for in the States and Canada, you get overseas as well, which is pretty cool.
I
The
guess that
problem,
is good. Yeah, it's the international usage, right? That's great.
yeah, it's great. And the fact that you could maybe live in a weird house where you don't get good cell reception and all your phone calls are going through the Wi-Fi. You know, you can do that with AT&T and T and stuff by getting a box that clicks on your router, but this is just
Hmm.
all kind of built in. And apparently they have a lot of agreements with a lot of the public Wi-Fis. So it
Mm.
connects onto things if you're in, you know, a mall or a major hub. Most likely, you know, your phone calls and stuff will be really strong because it's going to be using the local Wi-Fi. Now, the problem with Project Fi, though, is that it's only been supported on a certain amount of Android phones, and mostly Google's phones like the Pixel. and the Pixel 3, the Pixel 3 XL, the 2 XL, and then the LG G7, the LG V35, and the Moto G6, and the Moto X4. So that's kind of what the website says is currently available. However, cool news today, Google is going to open up Project Fi to the iPhone, to Samsung phones, and to the OnePlus phone. And so this is kind of
So
a cool thing.
is it baked into the operating system? Is that how it works? Because it sounds like it's more than just an app, or else you could have already had Project Fi. So it sounds like Apple has to put it into iOS.
Well, that's the thing is that they're trying to make it seamless, right? I mean, right now, you and me with our Android phones, we can open up Google Hangouts and do a Wi-Fi call to anybody, anywhere around the world for pretty cheap.
Sure.
And to US and Canada and Mexico, it's free. We have
Hmm.
to open the app though. With Project Fi, it tries to be seamless so that you just open up your dialer and then it calls, but it's calling with the Wi-Fi without you having to tell it to, right? And
Hmm.
so, yeah, in fact, it's in beta right now with the iPhone. And there's signs that users might run into bugs or be left without some of the Fi's features that are featured in the Android phones. And so, yeah, I was reading the article and it said for sure there's still issues. And it probably has to do with not being able to access the operating system as much as it would like to be.
So, Dan, is it related to Google Voice?
In a sense, I mean, Google Voice is a little bit different. I use Google Voice. It gives me a phone number, and I'm able to do Wi-Fi calls with it as well.
Hmm.
So in that sense, it's very similar. But the cool thing about Project Fi is that it's seamless, and so anyone, including mom, could just pick up a phone and use it, and it would be doing all kinds of free things over Wi-Fi that would typically be locked in a public setting, especially overseas, and you wouldn't even know the wiser.
Yeah, so all you need is Wi-Fi and away you go.
Absolutely. Now, Google Voice still is something that you might want to have if you do have Project Fi, because you can call people with it. You can have it so that when they ring your phone, it calls your office phone, or five phones at the same time. You can have transcripting for when people leave you messages. There's a lot of really great other features. And then as well, you can always pick a number with a different area code, maybe an East Coast number.
Hmm.
Um, so if you're in California, you could have a different state and people wouldn't know if you had a business. So there's a lot of great things about Google Voice. But back on to Fi though. We're hoping that it gets popular. My hope, though, is that it gets a little cheaper because $10 per gigabyte per month is a little pricey. Now, one of the cool features that they do have now, though, is if you don't use the full gigabyte or however much you buy, it actually rolls into the next month. And so
Yeah.
before they used to nickel and dime you, but now it just compounds over time.
So here's a question, and it probably just shows that I don't understand what Google Fi is. Um, why data? If you're already on Wi-Fi and you need Wi-Fi for it, then you should already have data.
And I think you do in situations where you have access to the Wi-Fi. However, if you're on a subway system or if you're in the mountains and you're connecting to an actual cell phone tower, you need to pay for the data.
So because they have these contracts with these mobile carriers, you should
Exactly.
still be able to get it even without a Wi-Fi connection, and that's why it's so accessible. Okay, that's good to know.
And one of the things that I'm not 100% sure on, but when it connects maybe to like Radio Shack's Wi-Fi or wherever,
Hmm.
if you're in the mall, it might charge you then too because you normally wouldn't have access, but I'm not 100% sure on that. It could actually be free there too. It's something that I've always wanted to try, but I have such a screaming deal with my current phone that
Yeah,
through Mint Sim, if you guys have ever tried that, they're not paying me to say this, but it's literally 20 bucks a month and I get
yeah,
5 gigabytes of data. So I've just never wanted to
that's
spend more
awesome.
money. Yeah. But for an international person like yourself, I mean, you're constantly in the States and
Yeah.
Canada. Project Fi might make sense, especially since you use Samsung phones.
Well, I've really wanted a Google Voice account, but they won't do it in Canada. And apparently, when it first came out, Canada was included. So, some very lucky people who signed up right at the beginning will still have their Google Voice that's with Canadian numbers. So, I can sign up for an American number, But I don't really want people calling me on an American number because they may be charged long distance if they're trying to call me and they're Canadians. So unfortunately, I've been waiting year after year after year for it to come out in Canada, and I'm still waiting.
Oh, that's frustrating.
Yeah.
I wanted to keep talking a little bit about cell phones. Let's talk about 5G. So 5G is going to come out next year, and people say it's going to be so fast that it might be faster than your cable internet that you have to your house, which would be
Yes.
so cool because I have the kind of house where the cables are all coming from a telephone pole and they have to string them across my backyard and it
Yeah.
just blacks out the sky and it looks really ugly. And if I switch cable companies, which I did last year, another cable company had to come and string up a different wire and they didn't take out the
Yes.
previous wire. And so now I have like 7 wires coming from this telephone pole and it's ridiculous. So any way that you can cut wires or cut back on it, I think is a good thing.
I agree.
I mean, I don't use landline anymore. Do you guys for telephone service?
We're actually cutting our landline. We kept it just because Kalen's 10, he doesn't have a cell phone, and if he's ever at home alone, which is pretty rare, but if he ever is, he can just pick up the phone and call. But you know what's funny? I don't think he even knows how to use a regular phone because whenever
Is
he's
it still
watching,
rotary? Is that why?
well, it's funny though because whenever he's called me using our Google Home. So he just tells Google Home to call Dad, and it calls me.
Huh. How does
So
it how does it do that? I mean, does it do that through Wi-Fi? And what's it
yeah,
using?
I think it's Google Voice, which drives me
How is
crazy.
that possible? Because you don't have Google Voice, you're in Canada.
But I don't have a phone number, right? Because Google Voice gives you a phone number and you can pick your area code.
So
And
what does it come
so
up with the number on your cell phone when he calls you?
unidentified caller, but I can
Really?
also go into my settings and I can put my cell phone number there and it will show up on other people as if it's my cell phone. But when he's using Google Home to call me on my cell phone, I think it kind of confuses it. So it just
Yes.
says unidentified
We
caller.
don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm a big advocate for cutting all wires. I mean, the fact that I have this wire to my ear is ridiculous. We need to cut them all off. Um, I'm all about Bluetooth speakers, all about
Yeah.
wireless things. And the cool thing is they say that by the end of 2025, so in about 6 years, um, 40% of the world population will be on 5G. That is tech savvy. So they're saying 1.5 billion people, which is awesome. So this is a massive boost in speed and responsiveness. And this is going to be great for all kinds of things, for the Internet of Things. So maybe your refrigerator needs to use the internet. Maybe your
You're
washer and
out
dryer.
of milk. Buy some milk.
Maybe it's your garage door opener. Maybe it's your car. And so if you have a situation where instead of being reliant on your home Wi-Fi, you could be driving around, you could, maybe have something in your pocket and things are always connected. The faster, the better. And because we're so video hungry, we're going to be streaming 4K and it's going to be a piece of cake onto our cell phones. And that's just next year. So that's really exciting. One thing I wanted to talk about is how much data we typically use. How much would you say you use per month, Matt?
Oh boy, I looked at it. So our home Wi-Fi, because we use Netflix and Amazon Prime, like we stream everything. Oh, I'd say we're probably around 30 gigabytes a month at least. Maybe actually double. I'd say 70. We're at 70 because we do everything over Wi-Fi.
And think about it, it's 2018. So the fact is, in 5 years, you're going to be doing all those kinds of streaming onto tablets, onto
hmm
laptops, onto cell phones, all 5G based. And it's going to be awesome. They actually predict by the 2024, the average user is going to use about 21 gigs a month on their cell phone. What I hope is that they make unlimited data thing again cheap because I'm sick of paying overages.
Well,
So,
I'm definitely not paying for 21 gigabytes a month right now.
yeah.
So I think that'd be fantastic. And 6 years is actually a long ways away if you think about it, Dan. In computer years, like dog years, 6 years is like 60. So, and it doesn't surprise me that it's going to take that long for 5G to get going because it's so close. Like you have to send a signal from like down the street is far away. You're talking 30, 40 feet and line of sight, and they're trying to come up with ways to bounce signals off of walls and through tree branches. And, it's going to take a while to get this mesh that's going to work throughout the whole world, especially in these big cities and going through concrete and glass and metal. And yeah, I believe it. 6 years until we're on 5G. And if you think about how long it took to get 4G going, I think it was only 3 years from the time they announced 4G till when most people had a cell phone that could access 4G. So just an interesting fact, I was reading an article today about Samsung's S10 5G phone. Samsung is forecasting that they're only going to sell 2 million of those 5G phones in
Whoa.
2019. So compare that to perhaps the 30 or 40 million phones that they sell every year. Even though they're going to have a 5G phone, they're not expecting the demand to be there because one, it will be costly, and two, the infrastructure just won't be ready.
That makes sense. It's exciting though. I'm hoping it works and that it doesn't give us all cancer. Now let's talk about security.
Yep.
One really cool thing about this podcast is we can kind of dive in a little bit and talk about keeping your data safe. One thing that gets a lot of people is phishing.
Mm-hmm.
So, have you heard of phishing before? It's where there's a clickbait link that looks really enticing. You click it, and then you
Yep.
get some malware on your computer. Now,
Man, we
this
have
happens.
tons of phishing scams going through our emails at work right
Oh, I
now.
was
I
just
must
about
get
to
3 or 4
say,
a day. Like it's
and
bad.
people click on them. It's so funny.
Hmm.
People will just think, wow, this must be from the boss, or it'll say like
Yeah.
quarterly financials, and you'll click on
Well,
it.
it looks like it's from the boss. It literally had my boss's name and it showed up in Outlook as it was from my boss and it said,
Really?
please review and approve this invoice.
That sounds like an inside job, Matt. Do you think it could be a disgruntled worker or maybe you?
Well, yeah, maybe me. What I think it's doing is somehow, if somebody clicks on it, I think what it does is it accesses our address book. And then, because like the ones I get, I must have gotten it from 50 different people in our office throughout Alberta, and they're people that I know, and even people who haven't been with the company for over a year. So I think it's somehow going through our address book and then spoofing and phishing.
That's amazing. It sounds like someone's putting work into that. And if that's automated, good for them. They deserve it because that is.
They're crooks, then.
But they are wise. Maybe they're using artificial intelligence for it. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on with phishing sites. Now, 2 years ago, when you were on the internet and you were going and you were going to click a site, Chrome would automatically be like, this is a bad site. Don't come here. You'd see this big, red X or bad site, bad phishing site. And what a lot of people do to make sure that the site is safe is they look in the upper left-hand corner where the URL is, and they look for the safety padlock.
Yes.
And now this article that I read said that 49%, so almost half of the phishing sites in 2018 now have that padlock.
Of course they do.
So let's talk about the difference about what a padlock is. Padlock means that the website has a secure socket. And that means that when you're talking to the website, both you and the website are secure, and hopefully no one's listening in on you. What is this good for if you're at like a Starbucks and you're connected to your bank? It's going to be encrypted between you and the bank, and people trying to read any of the packets that are floating through the air will have a really difficult time because it's encrypted. And so Google made a big push just this July of 2018 and said, all the websites need to have this secure lock or else we're going to push you down in the web searches and we're going to bury you and people aren't going to find you, because they really wanted it to be secure for, public Wi-Fi, or just even if people had somehow hacked into your router, And what's going on now, though, is people are misreading it and they're thinking because they see the security padlock
It's
that it
safe to
means that
go.
it's 100% safe, there's nothing wrong with it. And while it might be encrypting the message between you and the website, that doesn't mean that the website isn't bad. And so what's happening is people are going on these secure websites and they're downloading a malware from the
Hmm.
phishing site. So I thought that was really interesting, and that's a jump up from 25% just a year ago of websites that now have the padlock on it. So that's just a warning to you guys. If you see that padlock, that doesn't mean you're totally secure. It just means that the connection between you and the host is secure, but the
Your
host might be
connection
bad.
to the thief and the crook is secure.
Exactly. You see, they're getting smart. I bet you the same people behind this are behind whoever found out your boss's name and is sending out phishing emails.
Oh yeah. So Dan,
Um,
I got a question for you.
yeah.
Do you want to get political?
Yes. Can I hear the song?
Let's get political, political. So Mark Zuckerberg, he just can't escape the news. It's been bad news over and over and over again. Did you hear that he was summoned to the United Kingdom's parliament?
How is what? He doesn't even live over there.
He doesn't, but of course you heard about Brexit and
Of
how
course.
the United Kingdom's trying to break away from the from hearts trying to break away from the European Union. Well, it looks like, and there's a lot of evidence to point to that Russia was using Facebook, and not just Russia, but pro Brexiters were using it to alter the election, very similar to what
Really?
happened in the
In the
American
States?
2016 election.
Yeah.
So, just like Zuckerberg was summoned to Congress to speak and talk about what happened with the 2016 election, well, the United Kingdom had summoned him to talk about the Brexit election as well.
Did he go? I mean, did he have to buy
He
a flight?
didn't. He stood them up. And so it happened today, and it was a big deal that he didn't go. And
He didn't even
so,
Skype in or anything?
no, he sent his vice president of policy solutions. His name's Richard Allen. And so he's like, well, I sent a vice president. But when you are summoned by one of the G7's government, you should probably go, especially a close trading partner and a big chunk of your business, which is England. And so he didn't go. And what's also interesting is Parliament summoned politicians from all over the world, and they said, hey, if you have a concern, if you want to ask Mark Zuckerberg a question, come. And so members of parliament from all over the world showed up. So Canada, Argentina, France, Singapore, Ireland, Belgium, Brazil, and Latvia, they all attended to grill Zuckerberg, and he was a no-show.
Wow. So does he get fined by them, or are they gonna put some restrictions on his Facebook, or what are the consequences?
Well, I think it's very similar to when he was summoned by Congress. I think they wanted to ask questions, they wanted to grill him. I know that Richard Allen, this VP of policy, he admitted that they could do better and that their platform had been misused, but he didn't really say that it was their fault. He basically said it was the bad guys' fault. It was the Russians, or it was whoever it was that was using their platform. So a lot of people are upset. And this is a quote from a member of parliament from Canada who went. He said, our democratic institutions seem to have been upended by frat boy billionaires from California.
All right.
So zing to Mark Zuckerberg.
That is a zinger. Um, I just want to say this out loud here that I think if people actually knew what Brexit was going to do, they never would have voted for it. I mean, there was just such a crash in everything when it happened all across the globe. I mean, the interest rate on even mortgages dropped a
Yep.
ton because of Brexit, and now they've got all this legal issues of, can we trade with the European Union, even though they're right next door? I mean, you can
Hmm.
literally go in a tunnel and get to France, and they're different now. I mean, there's going to
Yep.
be tariffs, there's going to be people that are
Customs.
living abroad. I mean, I went to Spain this summer. A ton of people from the UK were living there, and they were telling me they have no idea what this means. Do they have to move back? Are they going to have to ask for a green card in Europe now? I mean, there's so many questions, and it's so ridiculous.
It
That's my
is.
opinion.
Yeah, it's really too bad, and it makes you wonder, and that's why a lot of people in the United Kingdom are actually calling for a second referendum. Now that everybody knows, do they really want to go through with it? However, the government says, no, look, a referendum was had, and we have to uphold it unless we can prove that there was some serious tampering that affected the referendum. And right now, there is a smoking gun, but the question is, how effective was it? And so it looks like they're going through with it and all the pain with it. You could also argue the same thing with the 2016 election. If everybody had known that Donald Trump would have won, I mean, I wasn't expecting him to. All the polls were showing that
Would you
Hillary
have moved to
Clinton.
California for that month and voted and then moved back?
I don't think it would have made a difference in California.
No,
You'd
you're
have to
right.
go to a swing state like Florida or some of the
Just
other ones.
move over to Florida. All of us would move there for a month or two.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And back to your point, I mean, how effective is political advertising? I mean, I would like to say that I'm not swayed by a Facebook advertisement, but maybe I am subconsciously. I don't know.
Yeah.
And My opinion, though, on Brexit is I kind of get the feeling that most millennials didn't vote for it anyways. I think it was probably the older generation that's not too Facebook savvy.
Hmm.
Um, However, maybe what were
But
you
you
gonna
know
say?
what? They're not Facebook savvy, but yet they're the ones that forward these ridiculous articles that you see all the time, right? They're the ones
Yes.
that believe the crazy that these scammers are putting out there and the conspiracy theorists. So maybe because they are susceptible and they are on Facebook, that they're the ones that are getting sucked into these issues.
Fascinating. Well, we'll see what happens to our frat boy from California.
Yeah.
I think it's good, but the problem is if every government just started petitioning him to come over, I mean, you have to put a line down and say, no, I don't live there. This is ridiculous. I don't have time to be doing this. I mean, he literally has a $1 billion company that has been sliced in half over the last week. He doesn't have time to fly to Europe. I mean,
Yeah.
half his net worth is gone.
But it's just been sliced in half because of these decisions, because of these issues. And I don't think it's good for his bottom line to stand up and say, I'm not going to one of the largest governments in the world, and to hold myself accountable for the actions of my company. I think that was a bad move for his pocket and a bad move for Facebook. And he's a global company, Dan. Global, which means you need to take responsibility globally. And I think it was a big mistake.
Well, if he does have headquarters in London, I'm not sure if he does. I mean, that you make a
Sure, he
valid
does.
point there.
Yeah.
And England is part of the pentablet with the
The
Queen,
pen tablet
the Rothschilds.
and the kernel.
These wee beady eyes. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is actually a really cool electronic vehicle. It's called the Rivian, and they're actually making an electric truck and an SUV. Now, this is cool because Tesla has had some really cool roadsters. I mean, it
Yep.
looks so good. And my favorite thing about electric cars is how fast they accelerate. I mean, you're going 0 to
Awesome.
60 in like 3 seconds. Now, the
Yep.
cool thing about this Rivian SUV is they're saying even though it's a pickup truck, you can still go 0 to 60, which is 100 kilometers an hour, in 3 seconds. Imagine
Wow.
that. Wouldn't that be crazy if you were off-roading and just
Yep.
punching it up a hill? I mean, it could be so much fun. The other great thing about an SUV is there's plenty of room to put that battery in the back.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure why this isn't more of a thing right now. Maybe because it's so heavy. So they must have some way to make the body of the SUV light so that it's more aerodynamic and able to with the electric motor. But it's no surprise that these things are popping up. Have you heard of any other SUVs that are or trucks that are being made all electric, not hybrid?
Trucks, there are a few rumors, but SUVs, tons. In
Hmm.
fact, just about every electric vehicle that was announced back in October they're all SUVs. So Porsche has one, Audi has one, BMW has one, their Volvo has like two or three. So they're all announcing their SUVs first, and it's because SUVs have a higher margin, a higher return
Oh,
than the
yeah,
smaller cars. And
sure.
so that's why just about every new electric car you hear about is an SUV. Now, the truck is neat because you're going to have that flatbed in the back and it's utilitarian. And Elon Musk, in fact, has been talking about a truck and he's ready to reveal it probably in March. And he says it looks like it's something from, oh, what's the Harrison Ford movie? Blade Runner. He says it
Oh,
looks like it's from
cool.
Blade Runner. So I think trucks are cool. I
I
think it would
thought
be
you were going to
great.
say The Client or Pelican Brief.
Yeah,
Oh,
Pelican.
cool. The 1990s. No, he
It
was in
looks,
Fugitive. Sorry, I'm getting those all
yeah.
confused.
So,
Um,
anyways, it
yeah.
sounds like electric vehicles are here to stay, but to me, the problem is the infrastructure. If you have a utilitarian vehicle like a truck that's going to be out in the boonies, you need to be close somewhere to charge up. And there's really no charging stations out by your farm or out where you're going to be using trucks. And so, what do you
Exactly.
think about the infrastructure?
Well, the infrastructure is tricky, and hopefully these farmers will be smart enough to put solar power on their barns, and then they could charge it there. I want to go through some really cool stats on this truck. It's got a 400-mile range. So if you're living on a farm, even 100 miles away from the nearest city, you've got
Hmm.
400 miles that you can go back and forth. And if you've got a full day of hauling lumber or whatever it is, I think 400 miles is enough, don't you? I mean, unless you're,
Absolutely. 400 miles is more than enough.
like I said before, it goes from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. It supports over-the-air updates. It seats five and has four motors. So it's really exciting. This Rivian is going to ship in late 2020. The truck is going to be available in either 180 kilowatts hours or 136 battery pack.
Hmm.
So it looks like there's a lot of different battery options. So they say that the R1S SUV will be delivered in 2021 and that both vehicles will ship with level 3 autonomy. And autonomy means that it'll be able to drive itself in certain situations. So this is all really impressive, but it could just be one more excuse for your friends to ask you to help them move.
Yeah. Well, I got a question. I've never heard of Rivian before. And there's been a lot of companies like Faraday that started out with a bang and everybody was excited about Faraday. And now where are they? Right. And, lots of companies try the electric vehicle. What do you know about Rivian? Are they actually a contender to Tesla? Do you think they could do it?
There's a possibility, but one thing that strikes me funny is why isn't GM doing this? Or why isn't Ford doing this? The people that are all American that have been in the business for 100 years. Don't they have the capital to be able to back this up, especially since they were bailed out in 2008 and they're in the black
Yeah.
again, like,
Well, absolutely, they have the capital. I mean, GM already has the Chevy Volt, and they're actually making a ton of Chevy Volt. So a lot of these big companies are doing electric vehicles. They just haven't announced any trucks. Just about every company has a car because it's an easy platform to
mhm.
do, and it's also lighter so that your batteries can take you farther. And then most of them have an SUV where you get less distance and you're not as fast. But the truck is, I think, the next thing to come. And for me, it's really about infrastructure. But if you can get 400 miles to a charge, sweet.
Sign me up, right?
Yep.
It's all really exciting, and these are things that would be on my shopping list. I think I would definitely get a truck with all electric. So pretty cool stuff. If you guys know anything about the Rivian, we'd love to hear back from you. It's kind of a new thing for us too. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, subscribe here on YouTube, and comment. We'd love to hear from you, and we're always watching our comments and responding. And check us out on our Instagram and on our Twitter too.
All right. Thank you. Talk to you next week.